You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. At least it is still Tuesday at the time that I am recording this. By the time you're hearing it or watching it, it's probably not. Definitely not watching it. Can't imagine that this will be up before midnight. But we are back, Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And if you're sitting here saying, oh, it's just the same old Isaiah, you just didn't, he had something up, something going on, couldn't get a podcast out, you know, maybe it's this the grind of the season's already getting to him a couple days in. No, I didn't have power. So, good 24 plus hours of no power, being a no power household. I felt like I was in survival mode, like I was off the grid. You know, I was running up to gas stations to get hot water so I could make oatmeal for breakfast. That's where we were. That's what we were doing. But we are back now. Wasn't going to leave you hanging without a podcast for Tuesday because it is game week. Well, I would have if we didn't have power. I wasn't about to just sit down here with like a flashlight and my iPhone. That wasn't going to happen. But since we have power, we're going to get into it. But we met with some players tonight, so actually it makes it for a good deal to not just rehash things that we've already discussed. So that's cool. A couple things of note that I really liked, and I think that the first one is just this idea that every time we talk to these offensive linemen in particular, they are so confident in the defensive front. So we talked to Zach Zinter on Monday, and then we talked to Trevor Keegan tonight on Tuesday, and just brimming with confidence. Now, yeah, you can sit there and say, well, what are they going to say? But you know, you can tell the difference, obviously, rather than just kind of being like, oh, yeah, like you do get a little bit of the everybody's playing great, you know, and you're still getting that with the defensive front, but you're getting a little bit more specificity to some degree. That said, I mean, we've certainly heard, you know, Josh Ross is Devin Bush, but faster. Donovan Jeter is Mo Hurst, but bigger, stronger, faster. You know, like we've heard these things before, but maybe it's just me being there. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just a rube. I look at what they're saying and feel like it is coming with conviction. That's what I feel like. I feel like they are convinced. And you know what? Like talking to, I talked to someone recently who was at practice, and they were just like, this defense is looking really good. I mean, I didn't get into anything other than that. But that should tell you, like, this wasn't someone who was like paid by the team or anything like that, too. So I feel like what they're saying jibes with what I have been saying I think is going to happen. Well, but they lost Aidan Hutchinson. They lost David Ojabo. Well, as Kris Jenkins said, you know what? Guess what? Michigan did. We're not going to be able to replace them. But there's certainly an element where they feel like it's going to be good regardless. So let's go ahead and listen to what he had to say about that.
But you're not going to be able to replace them. I mean, they did their thing. They were amazing players. They definitely brought their own combination of talent and leadership to the team, and we're not going to be able to replace that. But we have new guys across the board that are going to be able to bring their top-tier talent and bring their leadership to the team. So although we won't be able to replace them as players specifically, we're definitely going to be able to add on to this team and definitely develop new levels of talent across the board. And that's really been our main focus.
So, I mean, that kind of also jives with this whole thing that I've kind of been saying is like, it's almost like this act like Michigan's defense has never been good without those two players or without Daxton Hill. And actually something that Kris Jenkins said today made me think of Daxton Hill, because apparently, according to Trevor Keegan, he has a nickname, the Mutant. So I asked him what that was about, and that became a whole line of questioning for us in the media on Tuesday night. And part of his thing was like, he was asked by Angelique, like, what is that going to look like? You know, what are the attributes of the Mutant that we will see on the field? And he's basically like, you'll see. He's like, I'd rather you see, but he's like, just let me put it this way. If you think you're going to throw just like a quick little screen over there and I'm not going to get to it, think again. He's like, I've got speed, I've got strength, all of that stuff. I think that tandem up front, or trio up front, depending on the package, right, of Mozzie Smith, Kris Jenkins, and Mason Graham, I think might end up being pretty special. And I feel like it's been a while since Michigan has been really special on the interior. I mean, I'm not even mentioning guys like Kenneth Grant, Rayshawn Benny, some of these guys that I think are going to end up being pretty good as well. I think that this group has something in them that is going to remind people of when Mo Hurst was in town. Not just visiting, of course. Granted, I don't think I've seen Mo visit Ann Arbor since he's been a pro. He was at the Michigan State game in 2018, but that was in East Lansing. So, I definitely am very optimistic about what the front is going to be able to provide. The edge, I'm not sure yet, right? But I think that I still really like this addition of Ayabianoma. And, you know, Jim Harbaugh said he's going to be ready to go week 1. We've heard these other guys, Kris Jenkins, saying, like, he's been a great addition. He can go and get after it. Doesn't look, he was asked, like, do you see any kind of rust he needs to break off? He's like, not really. He came in great shape, ready to go. Again, I know, what are they supposed to say? But we've heard in fall camp some of these guys be like, maybe not the players, but the coaches. You can tell that Jim Harbaugh is very much in particular, very confident. He doesn't wax poetic often. He does name every player on the roster often, but he doesn't wax poetic too often. And I think back to 2017. In 2017, that's when he's really started naming players, and it was almost like it was doing it to kind of get away from having to talk about what the team was. So take it for what it's worth. We'll know in very short order what this team is capable of. All right, well, let's move on. I have something that I want to discuss, which is special teams. I know sometimes I get in the weeds when it comes to special teams, but I think that this is going to be it's important. And I think that it can play a major role like it did last year. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so obviously due to the issues that I had with not getting electricity in this household, we did not have the Mike Golick Jr. segment that we had hoped to have. I have yet to talk to him, so that's not like we're just going to insert that here. So we will do that on Wednesday. Thursday, we will have the mailbag. But I'll probably have a special episode on Thursday as well, because we're going to bring on Anthony Treesh from Pro Football Focus. That might just be a little one-off. We might do something weirdly different, not do like 3 full segments. We might just have like a 15-minute conversation with Anthony Treesh as its own special episode. We'll see how that goes. I like that idea, actually. And then Friday we'll do the preview. and we'll go from there. So, anyhow, the other thing that I wanted to just really discuss is special teams, because tonight we spoke to Caden Colasar as well as Jake Moody. Jake Moody, who's got a pretty awesome little thing he's got going, where he's kind of like Brad Robbins had with his punts and everything. Every time that Jake Moody gets a 3-point situation, he's donating $300, and there's some others that are matching to Mott's pediatric cancer ward, I believe is what he said. I have to go back and look at the transcript exactly what he said, but it's Mott and it's for pediatric cancer, so that's pretty cool. But they both said the same thing, and I found this interesting, and it's that when being asked like what makes Jay Harbaugh so good at being a special teams coordinator, Michigan having the top special teams unit in the country last year, he said that, well, both of them said that Michigan spends more time on special teams than any other program in the country. They said that they would be shocked if it wasn't the case. Beyond that, Jay Harbaugh can break things down in a way that other team or other not other teams, not other coaches, none of that really, but just in like more difficult concepts become a thing that they can understand. Let's listen to Caden Colasar and what he had to say about that.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for special teams at any other school, but I mean, just from what I've seen and what I've experienced, Coach Jay and the analysts J.B. Brown and Bradford Banta, they do an amazing job. Like it's crazy. Like we come in on a Monday or a Tuesday of game week, and like everything's just laid out for us, and it's like it's really complex things, but they make it simple so like everybody can understand it, and just like the schemes, and then also just put an emphasis on it. And head coach Harbaugh, he also puts an emphasis on it, and that really helps us be able to like spend more time on it. We probably spend more time on special teams meetings than any other program in the country, would be my guess, and in practice too. And so I mean, it's a third of the game. So I mean, I think it's only right that you do.
Time for a few more for Caden, if anyone wants to keep us going.
Graham Newsom was talking pretty highly about Coach Jay Harbaugh a couple of weeks ago, just speaking to his genius with special teams. What are some of the things that make him stand out and make him look like the genius that he is to you in the room?
Well, there's so many like different techniques, and it can get so intricate that like a normal fan would have no idea like how intricate you can get, and like the different techniques that are on punt return. And he also helps like relate it to us. Like there's this thing it's called, you're like in phase. Like you might have heard that like a DB is in phase with the receiver. You're in the back hip of him, and then like on the slideshow in the meeting, it'll be like pictures of, this is just coming to my head, but pictures of celebrities like walking in phase, like someone's in phase, so like there were celebrities right there, and then someone's out of phase, so like the celebrity's all the way up there, and like it's a celebrity couple, so it's like Kanye's over here and Kim K's like all the way up there, you know what I mean? And so like he just does like little things like that keeps everybody engaged, and I mean that's just one example of stuff he does.
So yeah, I definitely find that all interesting, which is not something I often say about special teams, but it's been such a good unit. And I think that the thing that I always kind of harken back to, and I said this in my article tonight about the special teams, is it's one of the three phases of the game, right? And Jim Harbaugh has often said you have to win two of those three phases of the game to win a game. So that's usually true, right? Like I'm trying to think, like when I think of 2016 Ohio State, I'm not sure where they lost really any of those three phases of the game, but I think it's generally true. I mean, maybe with the pick sixes and such that Ohio State had, maybe Michigan lost out on offense in that case. But defense and special teams, I think, were just what they were. I don't know. But I think it's generally true. And if you can go out there and do some great things in special teams, change the field position, hit long field goals, have touchdowns, all of that kind of stuff, yeah, it plays a huge part. I mean, special teams is probably why Nebraska lost. Special teams and defense, why Nebraska lost to Northwestern. Their offense was plenty good. I mean, sometimes you can probably do pretty well in two phases of the game, but lose really poorly on one. But this is the thing I like about this team, though, is that it seems like it's very balanced, and we think that the offense is going to be incredible. We aren't sure yet about the defense. I have some convictions there, but we're not sure yet. But special teams, it really might be there. And we're constantly like, well, the offense is really good. Maybe it'll carry the defense. What about that third one? And that was the thing. Asked Jake Moody, do you see other teams like, do they recognize that? Like, you go out there and they can tell. You can tell that they can tell that you guys put in extra work. And he's like, yeah, because they go out there and they do things that we haven't seen on tape all year on special teams. Michigan's special teams has been formidable. And I think that is actually, it's pretty smart, right? Because Nebraska doesn't have to always constantly be bringing up Nebraska here for whatever reason. Scott Frost didn't even have a special teams coach last year. Like, they took one of the three phases of the game and said, we don't care about it. But it's pretty important, right? So, I don't know. I think it's interesting. As you know, I don't like to talk about things I don't find interesting. I don't write about or talk about like coach contract situations and stuff like that. I barely talk about NIL because I don't really care that much. I know I should. We'll see how this goes with NIL, for instance, come early signing day this year. I still am betting that winning cures everything. And I think Michigan will win. So, like, let's say hypothetically, I mean, Michigan wouldn't be, well, they wouldn't have to win a national championship yet because that's impossible before early signing day. But, like, if Michigan's going back to the playoff, they're going to get some dudes again, Okay, I digress. Anyhow, I think special teams are very critical. It's not something I like talking about. It's not something I like writing about, but I'm more intrigued into it at the moment. So, all right. Anyway, let's move on. Let's keep the conversation going here in just a moment. Well, I must say that as frustrating as it was to lose power last night, I wasn't home when it happened. I was out there in Dearborn as part of a panel for the Club Greater Detroit, of which I used to be a member. I used to be a board member, actually. So it was great to see everyone there. It was great to see my good friend Rich Hale. It was awesome to see Chad Massey and Bill Wenzel, who was the one who invited me, and Kurt O'Keefe. Had great conversation with him, Ken McGee, all of these people. And so it was great. We did a panel. It was me, Josh Henschke, and Seth Fisher from MGO Blog. And, three good friends getting to talk Michigan football for about 2 hours. It was great. It was one of those situations where I felt like we could have kept talking forever. I was very eager. And definitely a big fan of just being in those types of environments and getting to, because it's one of those things where it's almost like I forget sometimes like where I came from, and that is where I came from. I would not be doing this job if it wasn't for Rich Hale from that club, Shelly Kovacs, who, if you played at Michigan at any point in time, you know who Shelly Kovacs is. You hear a lot about Greg Harden. Shelly Kovacs is kind of in that conversation as well. She gave me a personal introduction to Jim Harbaugh when I first started. And the late Brian Wassman, who unfortunately passed away between the Ohio State game and the Big Ten game unexpectedly. But those three were instrumental in getting me to this point, to where I'm at now, because I was a University of Michigan graduate who was serving and bartending at a Bonefish Grill. And making hype videos that every year, the highlight of my year was getting my hype video in the last post of MGO blog right before the season. You know, and that was my goal when I was doing those, was I want to be doing media things covering Michigan football. So it was just great to be back in that environment around these people who, you know, that's how I came up. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for them. So it's weird to be that, but then be like a keynote speaker at a kickoff dinner. And this is the second time I've done it, and it was great to have it with two other panelists, because I did it by myself in 2019, the last time they had a kickoff dinner. And that's a little bit more challenging when you're doing it by yourself, because I was like, and it was pretty big. There was like 200 people there, I think, maybe more, maybe less. And I was like, oh, I do a podcast literally every day. I don't need to prepare anything. And then you aren't prepared for having 200 faces staring back at you. But anyway, the whole point is I really appreciate them having me. And I obviously don't forget where I came from, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's all I have tonight, because it is late. It's, like I said, probably not the latest I've recorded a podcast. Sure, one of those times when I was going out of town, or like when I was going to Cedar Point the day before the Michigan State game. I might have been up a little bit later doing this, but nonetheless, we'll be back with plenty more this week. Like I said, splitting it up a bit more into 6. So going from maybe one podcast a week sometimes to having 6. Granted, the Anthony Treesh episode, like I said, is going to be its own little standalone deal. But anyway, thank you for watching and or listening. We will be back on Wednesday with Mike Golick Jr. As long as the power stays on, I think the weather will hold. Thanks for watching and or listening. Peace.